What's up, guys? Today I wanted to talk a bit about the upcoming game, but more 704 games, how far they've come, and really what the future holds. Uh, so, before I get into that, I do want to give a shout out to What If Racing and congratulations to him. From what I hear, he is now working with 704. I would assume, as sort of a consultant or advisor type of role. I'm not really sure, but the point is, we now have somebody, one of us, somebody who just loves NASCAR games, and I think will represent the community uh, really well. I can't really think of a person more who deserves it more or is more qualified, really, that I would rather have at 704. But he's most likely the best person to have there. So congratulations to you. Um, so without further ado, I'm just going to move forward from there. Um, I'm really excited about this game this year. As you guys have probably noticed, yeah, I do. I am. I'm always excited about the next game every year. That's not new, but there's a different level of excitement this year, and it reminds me of really the last time I was this excited over a NASCAR game was 2011, and that was the first Utechnics game. And the reason I was so excited was because we didn't have a NASCAR game for a couple of years. The last few EA NASCAR games really weren't that good, especially compared to previous years. They were going downhill fast. A lot of people wanted EA gone anyway. Uh, so we had a new developer coming with a new NASCAR game. So of course that's going to be very exciting because we all have that wishful thinking and was really hoping to see something, you know, much better than we've had. Unfortunately, the Utechnics experience was very disappointing. All five of their games just weren't not. They did some things well. Um, just overall, the games just weren't that good, and we didn't see improvement year after year. They were just very little improvements here and there, not enough to justify the purchase of the next game. But the games didn't look bad graphically. They were pretty decent for the time, and their paint booth was phenomenal. That I have to give it to them. We've never seen anything like that when it came to car customization. The level of depth to the paint booth was amazing. I loved it, and I think it spoiled me a little bit because I've always wanted to see that, come back. Once you have that, everything else pales in comparison. But that was great, and the physics was pretty decent, especially compared to the earlier Heat games we've gotten with this generation. The physics were pretty decent. But other than that, there wasn't really a lot to write home about with the Utechnics games, and they were really cut and paste every year. So that was the most excited I was for 2011, and that was it, really. So this it feels like that level of excitement again because of what we've seen and what we've heard so far. It's all really exciting. The latest gameplay footage by Jeff Favignano, uh, it wasn't at the highest difficulty. There was obviously some issues there with the settings, and the race turned out to be much easier than it should have been. But instead of focusing on that, uh, there was a lot to like about that, and it was the most exciting gameplay footage I've ever seen of a NASCAR game. Uh, because of the upgrades to the gameplay mechanics, to the sound, to the graphics. So that's why I'm excited. And yeah, we got to play the game. There's unforeseen problems that are always inherent with a game when it's released. But just even taking that into account, there's just a lot to be excited about. So 704, I think that we're starting to see something special when it comes to a developer, right? When you look at the fact that they're a small developer, and a lot of times we look at stuff like that as a negative, like, they're smaller, they have less resources, they're not able to do as much as bigger developers. That's true. But there's a lot of positives to being a smaller developer. And it might force you to do things outside of the box. And we're seeing that. And we're seeing that with the way they listen to the community. When was the last time you saw a developer, especially these big developers, actually trying to appease the community? That's not normal. And it's different. It is outside the box. And the fact that they're a small developer, they kind of need to do stuff like that because they want to maximize their potential for their sales and all that. So it's a smart move. And this is what I've been saying. They got to really appease the fans of these games. And that's why I'm happy that they've admitted that 80% of people spend most of their time on career mode. That's huge. And it tells me that they're looking for these things because they want to know what is the most appealing aspect of these games. That's very important. It's the right thing to do because now you know, well, if this is what people mostly care about, we really do have to keep that as our number one focus. Also, Sean Wilson reiterating that in his interview with Jeff Fabiano. I love hearing stuff like that because it just reinforces or I should say it quells my fears that they're going to just go to focus on esports and online. I know that's definitely something they're focused on and that they're looking at in the future, but understanding that this is what sells games and that has to come first is a big deal. Communicating, they're giving us things that we've been asking for, and I think this year, NASCAR Heat 4 is going to prove all the naysayers wrong. What I mean by naysayers, excuse me, like for the past few years, people who come in and tell you you're wasting your time. These people don't care. You're just, you're wasting your time making these videos or making these suggestions. Nobody's going to listen. I remember going all the way back to the Eutechnics forums, right? Some of you were part of those forums, and I was 73 Duster in those forums. I wasn't Disco Inferno, but I used to get into it with people on the forum because they would tell me, you're wasting your time, or they would defend Eutechnics because they would constantly make excuses for them, and so we would have a lot of that, headbutting. And I don't mind people who disagree with me on certain things. The one thing I can't stand is when people tell you you're wasting your time. Because we're not. And now you're starting to see that. We weren't wasting our time. And if we weren't so vocal, we wouldn't have things like the track map. Or these other things that we're starting to see. They address the AI. Now, if you've been watching me for any length of time, you'll know that nobody has complained more about the AI, about the sound in these games, about the stats, the lack of stats, than I have. I'm not the only one, but I've been the most vocal, and I've been screaming about this since Eutechnics, since that time. These are things that needed to be addressed, and if I would have listened to people telling me I was wasting my time, I would have gave up. And I'm not the only one, right? Other people in the community, guys like What If Racing, and all these other people that give constructive criticism have made an impact. And I think NASCAR Heat 4 is going to be a big representation of what happens when a developer listens to the community. And we still have to play the game. We don't know for sure what we're getting, but all signs point to good things. And I think it's a huge, huge plus that someone like Jeff Fabiano is testing this game and playing it and communicating with 704 as well. He's an iRacing guy. So even though you can't really compare console games to a simulator, I think it's awesome that somebody who does spend a lot of time in simulated racing and iRacing can play this game and give his perspective. I've never been in iRacing. I've never played NASCAR 2003, the season, the PC game. Those are simulators, right? There's a world of difference between that and console games. So I don't know what it's like to have simulator physics. So it's tough to judge. Um, but a person like Fabiano can play the game, and if he tells you, yeah, it does seem like he's impressed with what he's experiencing. That's awesome, because so, this game doesn't have to be, and this franchise doesn't have to be a simulator, and it shouldn't be. You have to appeal to a wider audience than iRacing. iRacing is for hardcore simulation guys who want to race people online. It's a service. So it's great at what it does. This needs to be great in a different arena. So I think 704 is finding their stride. They're hitting a pocket where you can appeal to a wide range of folks. Casual fans, you'll be able to adjust this game to any liking. Uh, you got people in the middle of the road who like racing games, aren't necessarily hardcore NASCAR. It's going to appeal to them. And it's going to appeal, I think, to a lot of guys who do spend time on iRacing but are looking for a little change. Not necessarily walk away from iRacing, that's not what I'm saying, but yeah, every once in a while I'd like to jump on something a little more of a different experience. Racing against AI. I know iRacing has been talking about introducing AI racing for a long time, but it hasn't happened yet. And even when it does, you're not going to get. There are things that you can get in a console game that you just are never going to get in a full-blown simulator. And it's things that we see in most sports titles with the presentation, with the career mode, with just a narrative. We have yet to see those things in this franchise, but I'm confident that these guys are going to address that. So the future looks bright. I think we all have had an impact on the development and where these guys are going with this franchise. There's a lot of positives, and that's why I'm so high on this game this year, and I'm high on the future. Now, I will say this. I don't like looking beyond 2 to 3 years. I think when it comes to game development, things can change overnight. Even though these guys have the license for another 10 years, 10 years is a long time. So I don't like looking that far ahead. Anything can happen, and I'm just focused really on more of the immediate future, maybe even next year or the year after. And as long as these guys continue to listen to the community and make the right decisions, right? Because these are the positives of being a smaller developer. Larger developers, they don't listen to the community. They have their own ideas, which are mostly revolving around profit. And yeah, it's a business. I get it. It's a business at the end of the day. They do have to maximize profit. But how you go about that is very important. And what you're seeing with EA and Take-Two and all these huge developers is they're not giving fans what they want. And they're focusing more and more on microtransactions and DLC. So they're ripping people off because they're giving you cut and paste rehashes every year and then adding a bunch of stuff where even the game's unbalanced to the point where the only way to be competitive is to spend extra money and get sucked into this business model, which I do not support. I haven't bought any of the last couple of NBA 2K games, and I'm not going to buy until I see a drastic change. The last truly great NBA 2K game, I think, was 2015. And unfortunately, they've been steadily downhill since then as they've leaned more towards this greedy business model. So you never know what's going to happen in the future. But as long as these guys focus on giving the fans what they want, the future's bright. I love what's going on at 704. I know that they also receive a lot of super negative comments, but focusing on the constructive criticism is one of the smartest moves they've ever made. And just thinking about how they have included the community. You have Jeff Favignano, real Radman. He's been involved with them, and I do believe he still communicates with them. And now you got What If Racing. Um, this is great, man. This is awesome. You couldn't ask for more than that from a developer, and you can tell just by what we're getting this year. It's not lip service. It's not a fucking scam. It's not like, hey, let's pretend we care about the community, because they do listen. I've been screaming about fucking audio, about the sound in these games for as long as I can remember, and they finally addressed it. And you guys are going to find out how important the sound is to a NASCAR game. And I'm going to keep pushing for customization and presentation. These are the areas that I think after this game is released that we're going to have to really focus on, because that's the biggest thing that's missing. But if you ask anybody who's ever been to a NASCAR game, NASCAR race, I should say, for the first time, right? Not a hardcore, long-time fan who's been watching on TV. I'm talking about a casual person who's just never been to a NASCAR race, doesn't really follow racing. You take them to a NASCAR race, and afterwards you ask them, what's the biggest thing that impressed you or had the biggest impact on you watching a NASCAR race live or even on TV? They're going to tell you sound and probably the way the cars look. And that's why these things are so important in NASCAR games. This is why I talk about immersion. Because you go to a NASCAR race and you realize how awesome and how different. You're never going to hear anything like you're going to hear at a NASCAR race ever in your life. And that has a huge impact on people. So to have these games, that's why it's important to have that sound be just right, because that is a huge part of the experience. Then you talk about, the visuals, right? The paint schemes. These things attract your eyes. They attract people. You look at other forms of racing and you look at NASCAR. These are the things that make NASCAR stand out. And if you want to be technical, NASCAR, these cars are basically billboards on wheels, advertisements. Very flashy, very loud, all kinds of colors, cool paint schemes. And that's part of the sport. It's part of what makes NASCAR unique. So the paint schemes are awesome, but this is another reason why customization is important. To be able to come up with your own schemes. It's just really, these are the big things that impact people when they go to a NASCAR race for the first time. I know when I took my wife for the first time, I thought she was going to hate it. She loves it. We go every year. And she loves it. So this is why these things are important in these games, and they need to be addressed. I'm going to talk. My one last thing. I'm going to talk a little bit about my upcoming review. I want to say something about the review I did last year with NASCAR Heat 3. I did that review after a couple of weeks, which is what most people do because you want to try to do it as soon as possible. And I always reiterate that it's tough to do a proper review after just a couple of weeks, because there are things about these games that don't really present themselves in full force until you spend a lot of time with it. So I will say that if I had to review NASCAR Heat 3 today, I would give it a lower score than I did back then. I still stand behind this. NASCAR Heat 3 is not a horrible game. It's much better than anything we've gotten, I think, in more or less the past 10 years. But it hasn't aged well. So looking back at my original review, I think that I gave it a higher score than it deserved. And that was based after 2 weeks. So I did the best I could after 2 weeks, but that just shows you the importance of spending as much time with a game as possible. So when you look at What If Racing, he released a review of the game just a couple months ago, and it was a much better review because he had spent more time with the game. and you're able to really soak in all the aspects that you kind of miss out after just 2 weeks. So he did a great job with that, and from what I hear, that's pretty much the biggest reason that he is in communication with 704. So he did a great job with that. He deserves a lot of credit. So, but if I had to review the game today, yeah, I would give it a lower score. I'm not gonna knock it down to a horrible game. It's not. It's better every year. These games are getting better, and it's not a bad game. It's just that as you spend a certain amount of time with it, I would compare it to, like, let's say, a leaky faucet. At first, that constant drip in the sink, it's annoying, but you could live with it. But after a while, the more time you listen to that water constantly dripping, it becomes torture. And I think that's what the issues in the game are. Not the overall game, but the ping ponging, the AI not spreading out, the tire model being what it is, where you are at a disadvantage against the AI late in the race. If you pit for new tires, you get killed, you get sent all the way to the back. If you stay out, you get run over. Uh, and the late cautions at the end of the race, there's those issues as time goes on become unbearable and even game breaking. So, what if Racing's review was much better? It was much more accurate, and he deserves credit for that. But that's, uh, I don't want to wait 6 months to do a review. I have to. I want to do it as soon as possible, but we're trying to put as much time into it as possible to be as accurate as possible. But yeah. So when I do the review, same video, I'm also gonna get into the things that need to happen for the next game. I'm not doing a wish list later because it's been confirmed these guys do jump right back into development almost immediately, right? So it doesn't pay to put out a wish list a month or two later. They're already lockstep into their next game, and it's hard to change your ideas and plans once you already got the ball rolling. So I'm going to do all that together in one video and keep pushing these ideas out there because it is working. We're not always going to get everything we want right away, but man, these guys are on the right track. And if anyone from 704 is watching, this is what's going to make you a success, and it's going to make you stand out from other developers. It doesn't matter how big these other developers are. They have terrible reputations. They don't give a damn about appeasing their consumer base. You are going about it the right way. And this game is going to catch a buzz. I promise you. And even if you don't see it right away, as time goes on, people are going to catch on. They're going to hear about the game. And if it is what it looks like it's going to be, right, I have to stipulate that because I haven't played the game yet. But, it's going to sell itself. It's going to catch a buzz. More people are going to want to check it out. And I love it. I love that it just feels like something that is going to appeal to a wider range of folks. And, I'm looking forward to the game more than any NASCAR game I can remember. So, that's all I got to say for now. I love what 704 is doing. I hope they continue on this path. And as a community, let's keep it constructive. Let's keep pushing forward. Things are looking good. And I can't wait for more information. We're going to get more videos from Fabiano and who knows, other people, more information, more gameplay footage. I'm loving every minute of it. So I look forward to that. And when more information comes out, I'll talk about it. I look forward to your comments as always. And I'll see you guys around.